Welcome to the Animal Combo Book Project Part 3. So in this tutorial we're going to go over the warp tool. As you can see here, I've added the legs to my animal combo here. Again, the clothing and the paintbrush isn't complete, nor do I have all the parts. But what I wanted to share was this leg here is actually the same leg as this one. It's the identical leg. It's just this one's been warped a little bit. We can see that if we go into Free Transform tool by hitting Control T on this layer here, which is the free transform tool. If you remember, go into edit and then free transform, hotkey Control T, and then with that selected, just right click and go down to warp. And you can see here I've done some extra warping in here. You can always close it out by canceling out by clicking this, or accept by clicking this, or you can just hit the enter key or the escape key. So this one here, I did that with this one. If I go again, go to warp, you'll see all the little changes I've done here. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to do this right now with a couple of fresh legs. So I'm going to turn off these two and then turn on these two layers here. And so this tool is best to do it after you make a smart object. Again, these are both smart objects. You just right click, go to convert to smart object, which this one already is, but it's in the options here, right here. And you'll see the little icon in the bottom right corner here designated that this is smart object. Again, it's just like a protective element envelope. It kind of protects it from warpage. You can always retain it back to its original state. So by hitting Control T or Command T on the Mac, again, it brings up the free transform tool. And then if I right click in here, I can go down to warp. Notice these options down here are kind of grayed out. Once you select warp and then right click again, those options become available. So the one that I use a lot is the crosswise, the bottom one, but I will share the top two, the horizontal and the vertical. Essentially, they are the crosswise is essentially combining these two. So if we want horizontal, basically wherever I click along here, I'll create a horizontal point, and then I can kind of warp that point. So I'll undo that a couple times by hitting Control Z a couple times, and then I can right click and do the same thing with split. That's the same one. Right click with split vertical, and you can see here basically if I click, I'll get these points where I can actually manipulate and sort of bend everything. But again, the one I like, the one I prefer is the crosswise, because it gives you a little cross section between those two areas. So watch what happens if I click right about here at the joint. I can actually click on here and actually move that joint, almost like a pivot point, which is really nice. So I could really determine how I want to shape that angle of the leg here. And then of course up here you still have the same warp abilities from previous warp. You can kind of manipulate the endpoints here along here. Say I want to manipulate a point here and a point here, again I can right click and choose split crosswise, and then click by left clicking anywhere I want on here to make a target. So this one would be again sort of and you can kind of see it creates again like a pivot point, which is really nice. So I can kind of move it like a joint, which is really cool. Basically that's how you do it. And then accept, all you gotta do is click the little checkbox or hit the enter key, or again cancel out by clicking that or hit the escape. I'm going to go ahead and click enter or checking that little checkbox. So you can see how they've changed quite a bit. Now of course I would paint and texture them a little bit, or adjust the shadows, the lighting to make them look a little bit different in terms of their legs. But you can start to see what the possibilities here. Let's show you another option example here in my final cover design. If we zoom in here on the shadow, you'll notice that these shadows kind of line up pretty good with the endpoints of the legs. And the shadow is basically just I'll show you guys how to do this in a feature tutorial, but it's a merged copy of this animal created as a shadow on its own layer. And so I'm going to turn off the shadow and show you what it would look like without the warp. So you can see here the endpoint isn't quite right. It's not quite lining up. Here it lines up good. And then over here it lines up pretty good. I could move this part over a little bit. So with warp, it would give me that option. So I just again hit Control T on this layer. But again, before I do that, you can see this layer is not a smart object by the little icon here. So I'm going to right click and go to convert to smart object. At that point, then I can right click in here, or I can hit Control T or Command T on the Mac, and then right click and choose warp, and then right click and choose the crosswise. And where I would put it on here is like literally right on the tip there of the shadow, and then I can click and drag and move it down. It is manipulating the other one, but if I again right click and create another one, click here, I can then move that shadow back up. And now we have some line shadows. Then I can move over here and do the same thing over here. Maybe I want to have this part come in a little bit. So again, I can right click, create spot crosswise, and then click here, and then just kind of move it in a little bit. Whoops. And if that happens, the nice thing that you also have is a undo. You can hit Control Z. So here it looks like this point here. Here we go. So I got a couple extra points here. I can just kind of move those over to line up like that. That looks pretty good. And then you can always hit Control minus or Command minus on the Mac to kind of zoom out and see how everything looks. And if you like it, go ahead and click on the checkbox, or again hit the Enter key or Return key on the Mac, and voila. Now we have alignment happening pretty well. So again, those are the new features with the warp tools in with the free transform tool in Adobe Photoshop. Until next time, see you soon. Cheers.